In today's show, we look at the PowerApps feature Formula-level error management, how it introduces some new functions like IfError and FirstError and some other ones, and how this error functionality, for whatever reason, enables us to start patching blank fields. So if you want to patch a blank text field or a date or those types of things, we can now do that with this feature. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with PowerApps 911. Those guys. And today, we're going to talk about PowerApps Formula-level error management. So this is a feature that recently went from experimental to preview. So we're going to turn that on. And then once we turn that feature on, then we have the ability to use it for a couple cool things, right? The biggest thing is error handling. So it's going to give us some new functions like IfError and FirstError and AllErrors. Some functions that allow us to build better error smarts in our app. And we're going to need those better error smarts because by turning this on, it also takes away some of the built-in error safety features. So we're going to talk about how that happens. And then as a bonus, for whatever weird reason, this feature also gives you the ability to patch blank values, right? So if you've ever wanted to take a field that was already set and set it to nothing, which I know is a very common request, then you can do that using this feature, which is pretty cool. Also keep in mind that this feature doesn't light up until PowerApps version 3.22082 or later. Oh, that's hard to say, so I'll put that on the screen. But so if you don't quite have that feature set or that authoring version rolled out yet, then make sure that you you might have to wait a hot minute. Or technically you can turn on the preview feature. But if you turn on the preview feature, there's no change between the two that I know of. It's just I always was scared of turning on experimental before, whereas I kind of happy with preview features. Anyway, that's enough of blah, blah, blah. Let's switch over to my desktop and take a look. Over here on the desktop, I've made two quick little apps ahead of time. And so this one is just one I went and set the background color to green. And this one I set the background color to red. Okay. Now the only other difference, as you might have noticed there, was if you go to settings and then upcoming features, this one has the formula-level error management turned off. And this one should, if I did it correctly, has the formula-level error management turned on. And so remember, this is a preview feature. It could still change. It could still have bumps along the way. But overall, now that it's moved to preview, we feel really good about it, right? Now what we want to do is explore this feature a little bit. Because remember, it gives us two big things, right? One on the formula side, which is going to let us drive that behavior around error messages and use that IfError function, which is what we really want to use. And then we also get that bonus feature around patch. So that's what we're going to mess around with here. Okay, so the first thing we want to understand is, let's go back over here to the old way, right? This is the way that this is PowerApps as we've known it forever. So if you had a label here and you said 1 divided by 0, right? If you remember from math class, that doesn't work, right? That doesn't return 0. That just doesn't compute. It's impossible. Don't do it. PowerApps has always let us get away with things like that, right? PowerApps like, it's cute. Shane didn't know what he's doing. We're just going to ignore that he gave us something that's impossible, and we're just going to return nothing. Okay? Now, over here, if you turn that same thing on, so we throw a label here, right? And so this is with the feature on, and we do 1 divided by 0 here, we get an error, right? And look, we get an error, we get a pop-up, invalid operation, division by 0. Like, it is mad at us, because it knows that that's not allowed, right? So this is one of the challenges of turning that on. So why would you want to turn it on if all of a sudden it's going to cause you to have error messages you didn't deal with before? Well, the reason for that is because once it's enabled, we now have the ability to turn on, use a function called IfError. So the IfError function says, hey, if 1 divided by 0 returns an error, right? And so in this case, it's to divide by 0. But if it returns any error, then we can just have it return 0. And so now with IfError, we have to add a little more, right? A little error handling there. But now we've got the ability to have this and have a behavior that comes in play if we have an error. We're going to use that and do a lot more cool stuff with it in a minute, but let's explore this one a little bit more. So the easiest thing to do is we're going to throw a text input up here, right? We'll give people a place to give us a number, and then we're just going to say, now I want you to be 1 divided by text input. Text input 1.text, not tab index, text. And so then now if I put in a 5 up here, it works. If I put in 2, it works. If I put in 0, it returns 0. Okay, so this gives us a way to kind of manipulate this and test it. And this is like literally how I figured out the function, right? As I put this on the screen, and I kind of just kept doing things to see what would happen. And the next thing I thought was, instead of showing a 0, what if I want to say, you can't divide by 0? Then we go right here, delete. You cannot, I can't spell, divide by 0. Oh my goodness, spelling is hard. Okay, so we do that. Now, when we do this, you're going to notice we get an error. Right? And it says the value you cannot divide by 0 cannot be converted to a number. So something to know about IfError is that everything inside there needs to have the same return type. So 1 divided by a number here returns, in theory, a number. So it can't return a number or text. They've both got to return the same thing. So what's probably easiest in this case is to just throw the text function around this. Right, it's in a label anyway. We don't care that it's the text version of the number, because in a label it is a text version. But now, if we do this and divide by 12, we get that. 5, we get that. 0, we get that. So this gives us a way to build some smarts into our app, right? IfError. So if you get an error, do this thing. So let's look at another scenario where this comes up a lot. We're going to add a data source real quick, and we're going to add the Office 365 users. All right, this one probably comes in once a month to our help desk. And so with this one, if we throw a label out here, we know that if we said Office 365 users.userprofile.v2, and then an email address like Chewy at PowerApps, oh my goodness, .com, like that. And then if we do this, and then we say, how about show his city? It should give us Mainville, right? So that's the city that Chewy lives in, apparently. So that works, right? That's a pretty common function. Now, what a lot of us run into, though, is what happens if you have a blank one up there, right? So what if we have an input and a text input? And so here, right, this is what? Text input 2? Yep. And so here we want this to be text input 2. So text input 2.text. And look, that is probably one of the most common error messages we see. User not found, or some type of user is confused, right? Or if we take this field now and we blank it out, right? Resource not found. This is one that we get a lot of error messages around. That UserProfileV2 failed and then something. Okay, so same type of scenario though. Now that you understand that you could use IfError with this turned on, you could come here and you could say something like IfError that, then what? Say, what do we want to say? We want to say, you need a valid email. And I realize I spelled that really poorly, but that works. And so now if we hit play, so we get that, but if we put in my email address properly, we get a city. So what's really important though, is in neither scenario do we get the red pop-up at the top that causes all the scary, consternation from your users. Because what's happening here, and this is gonna be a concept we're gonna visit this video, probably the next video as well, is, this is now called a handled error, right? So this isn't an unhandled error. You're handling it. So the red ribbon up at the top, right? Microsoft sends that when you have an unhandled error come through the pipe. But in this case, we're handling it and we're just putting a text here, and that is what we're able to get and drive this behavior. So this is a good thing to understand, is that we're now handling our errors instead of just letting the red bar at the top do bad things. And so in the next video, we're going to talk about how to use onError and to grab all the errors you don't handle and then take some of these concepts and go a little bit further. We're not ready to do that in this video, but just know we're going to go further. And so if you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you get notified next week when I put that video out, because you're going to want to learn how to do that. I have several customer apps I want to rewrite to take advantage of that onError thing. Okay, so this is giving us some control though, right? IfError, do something, right? Just think of it that way. So if this is, so in the IfError function basically says, hey, if this is correct, then do this. If this is not correct, then do this. Also notice here you can do a comma. And so just like a real if function, you could keep going. So what might that look like? So we know that if we were to go over here, let's add another data source, add data, we'll search for SharePoint. You have to spell that right as well. Is anyone else noticing I can't spell? It's Monday, that's why. So do SharePoint, we're gonna go over to our PowerApps videos, and then we will grab our employees list as always and connect that in. Okay, so another way that we might want to use IfError is around patching. Right? So like one of the customers I have in mind, they have buttons where when you hit go, right, it does like 17 things. And it might have multiple patch statements in there. And today, if one patch fails, then the next patch just soldiers on, right? Like no big deal. So like if we were to do this and say patch employees, default employees, and then just try to patch age is equal to 12, then what's going to happen here, right, that would fail, okay? So if we press this, you can see it's going to yell at us because title is required. All right, that's what we wanted. But in this particular case, if we then had a second patch behind it that said patch employees, defaults employees, and then we said title equals we did this. I know, very creative. So what happens if we press this button? Then yes, the one failed, but what happened is that second one went ahead, right? So if we go over here to data sources and we go here to this and say edit data, and we scroll to the bottom, we did this, just got patched. So in this scenario, yes, the first patch failed, but basically it said, oh, the first one failed. I sent an error message. Let me just soldier on. Sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want to stop, right? So how we could change this is we could go here and we could say if error. So if error this, then what do you want to do if that fails? Well, maybe what we want to do is we want to take advantage of the error message, right? And so we could say something like, so patch that. If that fails, then we're going to say notify. No, not notification. Notify. We're going to move our cursor. Their new UI is ridiculous. I need to complain. All right. So we'll do notify, and then we'll say patch failed. And then we will do a comma here. And so what this is trying to do now is it's, oh, I didn't want to do that. I want to do this. So it's saying, hey, if this fails, or if this works, do this. If this fails, then do this notify. If this didn't fail, then go do this patch. So now if we go down here, and now if we press the button, and we'll change this to we did this too. So now if I press the button, we get patch failed, a message up here. And more importantly, if we go over here to SharePoint and go to the bottom, there is no we did this too, right? Because it failed. And so since that first one failed, it didn't keep going. It just popped up the error message. But if let's fix this now. Let's make this say title yes, please. I know, very creative. What are you mad about? Oh, okay, there's supposed to be a colon right here. There you go. So then this should patch two, right? It should patch one that says yes, please, and then this one, and we'll say yes, we did this 3. So now we'll say play, we'll press the button. We see the ants marching, we don't get any error messages, and if we go over to SharePoint and refresh, yes, please, and we did this 3. So this, kind of cool, right? This is giving us finally a way to basically not do, keep soldiering through. We've done it in other ways before, like with ifs and variables and stuff to like check. But now we can just simply write these types of formulas out. And then of course, if we wanted to have another notify here, then we could have said, notify, and then what, more fail. I know, very creative. And so, right, so we can kind of stagger this thing out so then that way it'll just keep soldiering through and knocking through and patching all these, right? That's pretty exciting to me. Okay, now one more twist of the puzzle here. So this notify message was kind of lame, right? Patch failed. So let's break it again. So we'll just comment this out so we don't have to type it in again if I want it. Okay, so we're not patching the required field. So another thing we could do here is say something like this. You got an error. And then we'd say ampersand. And so then there is another thing that is new when you add this feature. First error. First error returns the first error message. And if you do a dot, it's a record. And so you can see the message, the observed, the source, the details, the kind. So then we could say, there's your message. And then we might do something like this and say, the control caused it. And then what control was it? And so then we can say first error dot source, like so. So now if we patch this, let's hit play. Let's try and hit patch. Look, you got an error. The network error when using patch function field titles required, the control that caused it, button 1 on select. What? Yes. Can you imagine how amazing that is? Right? If you've ever tried to trace or find out where that error message is coming from that you weren't planning on having, and your user's like, I just get these weird error messages all the time. Look at that. Now we could have the error messages when they flag the source. Okay? And in that next video, we're going to talk about on error, how we could even have them patch it off to an error log. What? I know. So first error is a neat way because this gives you access to that first error. Technically, there's another function, I think it's called AllErrors. AllErrors is a table of all the errors, but the first error should be enough to get you kind of going there. I've used AllErrors a little bit, right? Remember, it's a table, so if I was trying to find out if there was something in there I wanted, I was using filter criteria, things like that. But there you go. So IfError gives you a way to check, and if you have bad things happen, then you can take advantage of it. But remember that when we turned it on, all of a sudden we did break a whole bunch of stuff in our app. Now, one more piece to throw in there for you. Also keep in mind there is now a function called IsBlankOrError. And so this works the same way IsBlank does, right? So it returns true or false. The difference being is it'll return true or false, but it's going to check whether it was blank or it came back in an error state. And so a lot of times in the past we would use this generically, right? Like, so here we could go here, we would go here, we'd say, hey, and then we'd have something like this. We'd say, if is blank that, then 0, else 1 divided by 0. And so, right, so we would write our formulas in weird ways like that because we were trying to check, we're using is blank to say, hey, we know that if it returns an error, it would also just come back as blank. And so we were trapping that way. So if you were using things like this, then just keep in mind today, let's just copy this formula, copy, go over here, insert another, we'll take this one. And so instead of is blank here, you would have to go is blank or error. And so now we get that same behavior. So don't go write it this way now necessarily, but because we have the if error. But if you're just trying to quickly fix your app, you could come over here to your little search pane, right? And if you haven't watched that, there's a video on how this thing works. But we could go here to replace and say, hey, find all of the is blanks and replace them with is blank or error. All right, and then you'd have to write it out right. But you could use something like that to quickly update your whole app if you're going to turn this on. I remember probably last year, one of my buddies, Mark, he turned on this feature, and in his app, he had over 200 errors. He was really, really angry that day. And it was all because, he needed to go add a bunch of these error checks. So if you turn on the feature and you get a bunch of errors, don't be shocked. Just know that it's something you've got to, think through. But you've got better tools to solve it. You just might have to solve it. Okay, the last thing we want to talk about here is the other really cool thing about this feature, right? So it has a weird side effect as well. I don't know why they put this feature in here, but if we throw employees, and so here, let's go down and let's just show these people's department real quick. And so in a app today, there is no way to patch back a blank value, right? So if you wanted to change Greg's department from new hire to blank it out, you can't do that in today's world, right? Good news. Oh, now what we can do is we can actually do that by, once you enable this feature, then if we say patch employees and then gallery one.selected, and then if we said patch department equals a whole bunch of nothing, right? I guess we could just do blank, I don't know. We'll do it this way. So it's truly blank, right? So we want to patch it blank back to nothing. Now if we select Greg and then we press the button, look at that. It is actually blanked out. Whereas in the old days, if we did this same thing, right? So over here without that feature turned on, if we have a gallery and then we tell this one, oh, we got to add our data source. Oh my goodness, data sources are over here, add data, search for SharePoint. And so then now, do PowerApps videos, employees. And then here we can even copy things across, right? So let's grab this Control C, go over here, paste. And then we'll change this to be employees. And clearly you can't patch Greg's again, so we'll patch Chewy's. So we're going here, yeah, we'll just Chewy's. Click on Chewy and press the button. And so even though it didn't fail, nothing happened, right? And the reason for that is because it just said, oh, you patched blank. Blank means don't do anything. So it literally did nothing. So remember, this turning on this formula level error management gets you the ability to patch blanks finally. I can't tell you how many times you guys have asked me how to do that. And I'm like, well, you know, right? It even should work here. So like if I take our hire date, and so if we go here and we're going to patch Greg's hire date, and so do this, that is a feature you guys have asked for a long time, right? The ability to patch a blank field, right? Whether it's a date field, whether it's a text field, it doesn't matter. Now you can patch blanks. But the key was turning on the formula level error management because it's what enables that functionality. Right? It's really weird that they added that. They kind of coupled those two together, but they did. So we deal with it. Cool. I think that's everything we've got for today. Remember, hit that subscribe button because next week we're going to talk about how to do on error for your whole app. So instead of just setting this control 1Z, 2Z in different places, we're going to set it for everywhere in the app, which is really awesome and really powerful. Opens up some other doors. So we'll do that next week. If you have any questions, comments, ideas, things you want to see, other error scenarios you need to cover, put them down below. I'm always reading the comments and trying to respond to as many as possible. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day. Hey, me again. Before you go, click on the subscribe button, right? Join the list of 100,000 plus people that have subscribed already. Or if you need any help, right? Check us out at PowerApps 901. We do big projects, little projects. We do training. We do everything, and we can help you. Or if you want to see more videos, you probably do, then just click on the playlist above. Cool? Thanks, and have a great day.